Russian taxi drivers are standing on the edge of survival, and their protests tell a story that goes far beyond rising fuel prices. Across cities and regions, drivers who once believed they could earn an honest living are now finding that the math no longer works. Petrol prices climb week after week, spare parts are scarce or wildly overpriced, and routine maintenance has become a luxury instead of a necessity. At the same time, oil refineries inside Russia keep exploding, burning, or shutting down, officially blamed on accidents, technical issues, or silence. Unofficially, everyone understands that war has consequences, even when the television refuses to say the word. For a taxi driver, fuel is life. When prices rise by a few rubles, it is not an inconvenience, it is a direct attack on daily survival. Many drivers now work longer hours just to earn the same amount they made before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. 12-hour shifts have turned into 16-hour marathons. Nights are no longer for rest, but for chasing bonuses offered by taxi apps that quietly lower base fares while pretending to help drivers cope. The protests that erupted were not organized by political parties or activists. They were born in parking lots, gas stations, and driver chat groups where frustration finally boiled over. One driver from a regional city describes how his old Japanese car, once reliable and affordable, has become a financial trap. Sanctions have cut off official parts, and the black market alternatives are either fake, reused, or priced at absurd levels. A simple brake repair that used to cost a few thousand rubles now eats up half a week's earnings. He knows the brakes are wearing out, but he keeps driving because stopping means no income at all. This is not heroism, it is desperation. And desperation is becoming normal. While taxi drivers protest, state television speaks of stability, resilience, and victory. It avoids mentioning the refineries that burn in the night. When an oil refinery explodes, the explanation is always vague. Sometimes it is an industrial accident, sometimes a fire caused by negligence. What is never discussed is why these incidents have become so frequent since the war began. Drivers see the truth reflected at the pump. Fuel shortages appear suddenly, prices spike, and rumors spread faster than official statements. People who live by the road cannot be fooled by studio lights and scripted optimism. These stories matter because they reveal the internal cost of aggression. The war against independent Ukraine is not only destroying Ukrainian cities and lives, it is quietly hollowing out Russian society from within. Taxi drivers are not oligarchs or generals. They are ordinary people who once tried to stay away from politics. Many avoided discussions about Ukraine entirely, believing it was safer to focus on family and work. Now politics has come for them anyway, in the form of empty wallets and broken cars. Another driver tells how he joined a protest for the first time in his life. He was afraid, not of the police at first, but of being seen by neighbors or reported by someone seeking favor. Fear has become a background noise in Russia, constant and exhausting. When police arrived, they did not listen. They recorded faces, checked documents, and warned drivers to go home. The protest ended quietly, but nothing changed. Fuel prices stayed high, repairs stayed unaffordable, the sense of being trapped grew stronger. This is how wars rot societies. Not with dramatic collapses, but with slow suffocation. A driver calculates whether he can afford to replace a tire. A mother wonders if her husband should quit driving and find another job, even though there are no jobs. A family cancels a doctor's visit because the money went into gasoline. None of this appears in official reports. None of it fits into patriotic speeches. Some drivers still believe the propaganda, or at least repeat it out loud. They blame the West, sanctions, enemies everywhere. Yet in private conversations, doubts surface. Why is fuel expensive in a country that exports oil? Why are refineries burning if everything is under control? Why do officials drive luxury cars while telling drivers to be patient? These questions do not always lead to open opposition, but they erode trust. And when trust disappears, only fear remains. Short war stories like these are easy to ignore because they lack explosions and front lines. But they are the connective tissue of reality. A taxi driver stuck in traffic is part of the same war as a soldier in a trench or a Ukrainian family hiding from missiles. The difference is visibility. Ukrainian suffering is targeted and violent. Russian suffering is indirect, disguised as economic hardship and temporary difficulties. Both are real, and both are consequences of the same decision to wage war. One driver recalls how Ukrainian passengers used to ride in his car years ago, workers and students moving freely across borders that felt less hostile then. Now those borders are lines of blood. He avoids talking about Ukraine with passengers because opinions can be dangerous. Silence has become a survival strategy. Yet silence does not fix engines or lower prices. The world needs to hear these stories not to feel pity for Russians, but to understand cause and effect. Aggression does not strengthen societies, it corrodes them. Every exploded refinery, every protest ignored, every driver forced to choose between safety and income is evidence. These are not abstract economic indicators. They are lives bending under pressure until something breaks. When taxi drivers protest, they are not demanding luxury. They want stable fuel prices, access to parts, and the ability to work without destroying their health. These demands sound modest, almost apolitical. But in today's Russia, even asking for economic fairness can be seen as disloyalty. That is why many protests remain small, fragmented, and quickly suppressed. Fear is effective, but it is not permanent. I am not a professional vlogger, and I do not pretend to have all the answers. I speak because silence feels like complicity. These short war stories deserve attention because they show how far-reaching the consequences of war truly are. You may never meet a Russian taxi driver, but the decisions made in Moscow affect people like him every day, just as they devastate Ukrainian lives on a far more brutal scale. Ask your questions and get your answers. Question the narratives that simplify complex realities into good versus evil slogans without human faces. Listen to the quiet voices, not only the loud ones. War is not only what happens on the battlefield. It is what happens when a man at a gas station stares at the price board and realizes he cannot afford to go home early anymore.